okay, so you mentioned that the George Floyd guy was essentially sacrificed.
He was sacrificed. He was sacrificed, and it's part of their ritualized religion or whatever. And also you could say the same about not only the symbolism but the reality of marrying Huma Abedin to Alex Soros. Like,
Wow.
that is fucking strange because people know Huma Abedin is also a witch. And it can be hard for people to understand the influence of the British, but also of Freemasonry, which the British can utilize.
Really?
Well, the British can utilize Freemasonry easily ever since, you know, Henry VIII and the rise of the Anglican Church. I mean, they're anti Rome, they're anti-Vatican, and Freemasonry is an anti-Vatican proposal, you know, as a like by definition, that's like the point of it is.
Okay, I see.
You know, Mozart was a Freemason, George Washington was a Freemason, okay, but the point is that with the Muslim Brotherhood, you know, people think, oh, but that was the 19th century. Like, what do you mean it's not really Islam at the foundation of their beliefs? Like, they refer to so much like, you know, Islamic literature, and yes, I mean, but look, there's lots of insertions of things that are actually, you know, Freemasonic or Theosophic or occult. And anyway, I mention this because Huma Abedin is very connected to Muslim Brotherhood, but yeah, like her family are power brokers in some, but the Muslim Brotherhood is divided. It's not like the same as it has different branches, you know. So anyway,
yeah,
but Huma Abedin and Alex Soros is like very big symbol of how this is. Hillary Clinton may have been the one who was the mentor of Huma Abedin.
Oh, really?
In this occult stuff. It's all very like eyes wide shut type of stuff.
Yeah. Okay, Joaquin, please, could you please tell us about like Kamala Harris as a district attorney? So, did she do a lot of good for the community where she was a district attorney or not? How do you estimate her her activity?
It's you know, you have to take a nuanced approach because, like, look, what they're interested in is in power, right? Both actual and supernatural, and they're not Christian, and for them things are very easy. It's very easy because there's a one-to-one relationship between what their God wants and what works in the world. Like what their God wants, the Dark Lord, and what works in the world, there's a one-to-one relationship, right? Because the world is a corrupted place as well. So it's like, you know, do evil things to get into power, and you will get into power through evil things much easier, actually, than the honest way. You see? So, and then that's what their religion says you should be doing. So now their God is happy. So for them, it's easy. So you have to understand that these people operate on a different level. Like, they may or may not even believe in it. Some do and some don't, but they know that they participate in this religion. Like, for example, we all can agree that there are politicians that pretend to be pious and really believe in God, but they just actually participate in religious ceremonies for the public so that their voters vote for them and that they have support. So it's also conceivable that there's people in the ruling class who aren't really Satanists or don't really believe in evil as a supernatural force, but they participate in the ceremonies and they're seen as being involved in the occult rituals of the elite. whether or not they personally believe in it. They might just think, oh, this is an interesting art thing, or this is just, I mean, they know that other people believe it, but they'll participate in it with their own rationalization of why they're there.
Yeah,
That
and
said,
yeah, and the
with
thing,
Kamala Harris,
yeah,
what we have to understand is this,
yeah,
is that, like, conceivably, you could have like a very anti-crime district attorney who's obsessed with locking everybody up.
mm-hmm.
Okay, like conceivably, there's like much worse than Kamala Harris.
Oh,
Okay, but the way that their power works is about violating the faith. It's about violating promises. So like, even though Kamala Harris didn't really like convict people at a higher rate than past more law and order oriented district attorneys or state attorney generals, when she did it, it was breaking a commitment that she wouldn't, and that's more power for them when they break hearts, when they break commitments, when they break promises. And in other words, like, she, in collusion with the prison industrial complex,
oh,
who give money to her campaign. See, we have privately owned prisons
yes, I know.
who bribe judges to make more convictions, but also to have that, and for the laws and for that environment to exist, the state attorney general, who's like the district attorney of the state, the AG, has to be on board with that, probably has to pilot the program. So she's deeply involved in all of this very negativistic stuff. And she extended people's sentences who should have been released to the maximum, or created conditions in prison so that you have recidivist situations. Like, if you put predatory people in the same cell or in the same cell block with non-predatory people, then you're gonna, and they do that a lot, then you're gonna create like a lot of master-servant relationships in the prison. But then people, when they push back to defend themselves from being raped or having to pay rent, they were in there for 6 months on minor offenses. Now they got into a fight in prison because of the conditions in the prison, in the private prison system, and the attorney general is manipulating these. And then you're gonna get all these people in trouble in prison, and now they're gonna be in prison for longer. So there's a lot of ways to keep people. You can deny parole. There's a lot of things that you can deny good behavior. There's a lot of things that were done in her system to prolong people's sentences who were working in manufacturing or in call center jobs, like from prison. Like in the United States, when you call customer service for something and it's not someone in India or the Philippines, and if you're talking to the person and they're speaking like American English, that person's in jail.
Oh yeah, it's funny
Like
how
100%. So yeah, anyway.
yeah, it's funny how if we have call centers in jails, it's usually people who want to scam normal Russian citizens out of their money.
Right, they're not being run by the actual, like a real company.
No, they're just running for themselves. They call from prison and trying to scam Russian citizens out of their money.
Yeah, no, we have a privatized, for-profit, like, prison labor system. Like, we're addicted to convicting people.
Oh, some sort of privately owned gulag.
We have privately owned gulags, labor camp, labor. They're labor systems. It's cheap labor. Like all of the furniture in Kamala Harris's office was made by prison labor, slave labor.
Yeah.
So it's a new form of slavery. And then when you look at the disproportionate, like, per population, like Black people are overrepresented in prisons, And prisons is listed, like incarceration is listed as an exemption to the end of slavery for Black people. When they passed the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments, or is it 16th Amendment of the Constitution? Forgive my ignorance. But it's in those later post-Civil War amendments relating to the end of slavery that they explicate. People can pull up the passage. My ignorance over the numeration of the Constitution should not be confused for my ignorance of the meaning of that clause.
Oh.
That puts people, if the being freed of slavery no longer applies to you if you're incarcerated.
Yes, exactly. And
not just Black people, all people.
And do you think the gangster rap culture, that like the hood gangster, do you think it contributes a lot to it?
Big time, because women have a lot of power. And if you're a young man and you're 13, 14, 15 years old, I mean, young man, I should include that in the United States, we reach puberty on average of 6 years before other countries. So you're 13, you're 12 years old, you're a young man, you're in school, and the culture is promoting the gangster or the pimp as the idealized archetype of masculinity and power. Well, you can try to disagree with that, but all the girls believe it. And so if you want to be permanently unsuccessful in a reproductive or romantic sense, then avoid being a gangster. But if you want to have access to women, you know, it's very evolutionary. It's very, you know what I mean, very basic what we're talking about here. So that's the mechanism that it works on. But this was promoted top down by, I'll put it politely, non-Black people of white, non-Christian orientation, white but non-Christian, control the record industry. And all of the minor labels and others that came after developed in that model and learned by that, you know. Whether it was Death Row, like Suge Knight, and all of these record companies were based on models like of Columbia and RCA or not RCA, Columbia and others anyway, record companies, and there was a change in music that happened overnight. It happened really overnight. And even though there was rap since the late 70s and early 80s, you know, like Run DMC, and then, you know, the Fat Boys and stuff like that.
Grandmaster Flash,
Grandmaster Flash, Slick Rick, The Ruler. I mean, there was, even though there was rap in those days, it was like, it wasn't a gangster thing. It was a little bit. I mean, of course, there was an aspect of the rebel, of the artist, but it was almost something in between, like a transition between like doo-wop, like a cappella, barbershop, street corner, you know, into rap. And you had this like in the parks of New York and things like in Central Park and other places in Brooklyn, the Bronx, and in the 5 boroughs, and the development of rap. But you have also the West Coast. But the thing is that the gangster themes began to be like a top-down mandate, like by the early 90s, by like 91, 92, by the time you had like Snoop Dogg and these things, and the whole East Coast versus West Coast rivalry, this is all manufactured. So there was a culture that was positive, that was developing from the late 70s and through the 80s, and this was huge. Cultural shift, and people like Jesse Jackson, politician, you know, were instrumental in creating a positive Black vision for Black America, for white America to associate with Black America too. And this was predominant through the 1980s. You know, I mean, you have to think about the 60s, the assassination of King, the assassination of Malcolm, the what people experience as the betrayals of the 70s, and the rise of the US movement, and the Rainbow Coalition and things like this, as a positivity movement that acknowledged the themes and the demands of the radicalism of the 60s and really the 70s, especially the rise of the Black Panthers. You know, you have this loss of hope after the murder of King, and then X and King, and then you have the rise of the Black Panther Party. It's like, well, you know, we understand the sociology there. So, but when you get to the 80s, you have like Lionel Richie, you have like Prince, you have like Michael Jackson, you have like Normal, you have the Cosby Show, the Cosby Show. You have this normalization of the Black experience that should have continued. You see, but then Hollywood and the entertainment industry and the elite decided to go against this. There was almost like a neo reaction, you know. In other words, like they went in the direction of like, let's make it race music again. Let's segregate it again. Let's make it be the other. Let's other it, the othering of the Black experience. And then now it was like the 1940s again, happening in the 1990s, you know, with rhythm and blues, and all the lyrics are about sex and violence. Like in 1940s, Black music, a lot of it was risque, and the themes involved sex and violence, but it was fun music. Don't get me wrong; it's really fun, danceable music. Like Roy Brown and others, jump jive and early, you know, pre-white rock and roll, you know, pre-Elvis, you know, Black rock and roll. There was kind of a return to this bifurcation and separation and division and promoting the Black as the renegade and the outlaw and things like this, which are very negative archetypes for young Black men, because this is determining like if you're a man or not. And so if you set things up the way that the American ruling class have done is catastrophic, because they basically have made it be that the Black experience and masculinity must be in this gangster form. You know, so it's a product. It was done on purpose. You see, like it was, you had something dangerous happening that they had to stop. There was actually, it's funny because you would think they would support this because it's transatlantic, but there was like a coalescence happening between European, like Eurobeat and Italo disco and high energy in the US, and like Africa Bambata. So you had something between like connecting between like Euro electronic music and Black people music in the US.
Oh yeah.
You see, and this would have been very uplifting for Black people. It was dance music. It involves computers. So now you get a generation of programmers, and you know, and like electronic music and digital, and it connects Black people to Europe in a way that they get exposed also to the classics of, you know. And I know maybe you might say, oh, that's Eurocentric. Well, you know, no one is saying that people also can't be into their roots, but when it's the opposite of being ghettoized. Like the Black experience in America is ghettoized. And what the American ruling class has done is grow that ghettoization even into, you know, white communities. And it's a worldview. Like it destroys your ability to travel and see the world. Like imagine that you're from New York and you're just immersed in hip hop culture, which I think is the worst, most disgusting culture on the planet, personally, as much as I love rap. You see, because I can separate these. Other people can too. I don't prejudge when I don't assume when I see someone that's like into it that they're stupid or they don't have other angles.
Well, I
They
was
can be
at some point
fully.
in my life, I was listening to rap and the gangster, even gangster rap. There was a period in my life.
Yeah, so it's like I don't prejudge,
Mm,
but as a worldview, for example, like Jennifer Lopez,
mhm,
like people who are in this on this bandwidth, let's say they're from New York, they can travel to Tokyo or
mhm,
Belgrade or Moscow
mhm,
or Rome, and they've never left the ghetto in their mind. They're looking for hip hop in Tokyo. They're looking for hip hop in Rome. They're looking for hip hop in Belgrade.
Oh
They're
yeah.
looking for a replication of the ghetto that they come from, and they want to
Mhm,
immerse. And they actually, it's just being in the hood globally.
mhm.
It doesn't
Oh
mean
yeah.
there's like a prison that you can't
Mm,
escape from, because it's also hip hop culture promotes a lot of thought terminating one-liners, like cliche
mhm,
expressions and things that limit your ability. And it's an anti-intellectual movement as well.
mhm,
So there's a lot, and I'm not talking about alternative hip hop and things like this, and the lyrics
mhm.
are very profound. I'm talking about mainstream, mainline,
Yeah, mainstream.
you
Yeah.
know, yeah. So it's but it was a social creation, socio, I mean, not too different from Beatlemania, just
Mhm.
20 years before,
Yeah. And you see, my friend, there is a video where a guy asks I believe a black woman, why does she vote for Kamala Harris, and she say, Because she's black." Have you seen that
Well,
video?
that's another phenomenon, but no, it's related. But
Hmm.
I mean, that's more a problem. Well, anyone could say that, but generationally, you could definitely, we understand that in terms of how politics is perceived in the US, like baby boomers are really into symbolism. And people, there are a lot of really milk toast, white bread, 20 somethings that are white from, they're white, like, um, and they're very, very Anglo-Saxon in their
Hmm.
upbringing. They grew up in only white communities in white parts of the country. Then they go to university and they meet a black person, or they
Hmm.
have a black professor, or they get involved in a student group that has some radical politics or something, or even moderate politics, right?
Hmm.
Doesn't matter. Now they become enmeshed in something.
Hmm.
They think, oh, this is progress. They think, oh, the symbol of a black woman as president is very powerful in their mind.
Hmm.
Well, there is power there, but not the good kind. But the symbol for them is like the politics. This is a baby boomer approach,
Hmm.
but I'm explaining other demographics that are prone to be sucked into this approach, because baby boomers tend to be the professors at the universities as well,
Yeah. Yeah.
and but if you have a lived life, like I grew up, like me and Tim Kirby, like grew up with black people,
Hmm.
um, and so for us, it's like, when you grow up with black people, you don't have prejudice against them.
Hmm.
But people don't understand how prejudice works. Like, people think prejudice is just bad views about that group.
Hmm.
But having blanketed good views about a group is also prejudice. Like,
Yeah.
people are individuals, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's the truth. Like, so the white liberal is a reverse racist. Like, they see black people and they see them as a collective entity,
Yeah.
which is the same as people that see them as collectively bad. They just want to see them as collectively noble, but not noble like they aspire to be like them.
Hmm.
They see them as the noble savage.
Yeah. Yeah. I see.
Like, we should love these people, and we should not be prejudiced against these people, because they can still become more like us.
Yeah.
we can
I
still
see.
teach them. We can still enlighten them. Like they have something to learn from us
Yeah,
fundamentally about experience and life and existence,
yeah,
which is a very
very
prejudiced view,
prejudice. Yeah.
very prejudiced. And like when you grow up with Black people, you're like, there's good ones and bad ones, it's just like who you
Mhm.
meet, like everything else.
Well, when I was growing up, I didn't have black people live. I didn't grow up with, but I grew up with Tajiks, Armenians, Azerbaijanis, and I also don't understand people in Russia who are like Russian, and they hate it because of the Crocus attack. They say all Tajiks are bad, all Uzbeks are bad, all Azeris are. No, no.
No. Yeah, it's like
Mhm.
people are complex,
Yeah.
and you can't, and that's people as a group are complex. Individuals are complex.
Mhm.
So then multiply that over a people, or even why even think in that term, unless that's the category that you're focusing on for some sociological or political reason.
Mhm.
Otherwise, people are just individuals. And I mean, you might imagine that you see someone of a certain ethnicity or identity, you might imagine that they have some shared experience or some point of reference, and you might be
Mhm.
right enough, and you are. But that's only
Mhm.
like the tip of the iceberg of what makes a person, the depth of a person beneath the surface.
Yeah, and the same. And listen, since we've talked, and I think we've talked enough about Biden and Kamala Harris, I
Yeah.
would now let's go to the opposite team. I would love to ask you about not Trump. People, we have talked enough about Trump in the
We
past.
have talked a lot about Trump. Yeah.
Yeah, yes. I would like to ask you about his vice president, J.D. Vance.
Sure.
Yeah, people call him like a bad name, like a hillbilly, like all that stuff. He's a hillbilly, he's racist, sexist, and blah blah blah.
Yeah. I mean, there's no evidence that he's like racist or sexist or anything like that.
Sure, there are no evidence, but people still call him these names.
I mean, I guess either he's not racist at all, or he's like an ultra racist because
Hmm.
like his wife is Indian,
Yeah.
so but she's very brown, and like, but she's an Aryan, so either he's like
Hmm.
either he's like
Hmm.
at the heart of the Indo-European Aryan race, or he's not racist at all. Um, via his wife, but no, he seems like not a person that has those types of ideas about the
Hmm.
world. But he's an elitist, and I don't trust him. I don't trust him. I think that that he is self-conscious, not in the sense of being shameful or bashful, but he is self-aware. Rather, he has self-conscious. He's self-aware of the impact and the power of his narrative in his life,
Hmm.
and it is a powerful one. And a book that he wrote, Hillbilly Elegy, became the movie, but it was before he's in politics. And he's just like
Hmm.
a rising star that defeats a Democrat that was championed and favored to win
Hmm.
in Ohio just like 2 years ago in the race. So like out of nowhere.
Hmm.
But you know, but his professor at Yale, an Asian woman, was the one who wrote the book about tiger moms, like the rise of the tiger mom or something like that, as her autobiography, and that inspired him to write an autobiography too.
Oh yeah.
So an East Asian woman like was his professor, and then he married a in England they say Asian for Indian, but I call that Indian.
Yeah.
Dots, not feathers. But yeah, um, he was very similar biographical parts post Yale
Hmm.
to Obama. Like his first job was one of these brokerage or equity firms. Obama's was called Big Business International Group. He didn't found it. I mean, he was like an intern. He was hired. It was like his
Hmm.
job. But these are CIA front businesses.
Oh.
You know, and we have a funny system. I'm sure Russia is not too different, but you probably have a little bit more corruption controls. But basically, like, we have companies that are just fronts for the intelligence services, but that doesn't mean they don't make money. You know, in fact, they have special access to making money. And so you have a lot of wealthy CIA officers that have money way beyond their income that would be listed on some government report, you know, because they're also, you know, undercover as the CEO of some company, earning that real salary too, you know. And that company gets privileged in contracts in places that the U.S. Army has been successful or that we've bombed or whatever. So J.D. Vance has similar with Obama in this, and then, you know, Heritage Foundation likes him too, and but you know, there's many ways to discuss it. If you're talking about the themes of the campaign and how that fits in, how hillbilly elegy works, but it's also as interesting to talk about that Ron Howard directed the film and that he could have easily been a Democrat. He could have easily been J.D. Vance could have easily become a Democrat with his same views and his same biography and his same story. And at the time, maybe that was part of the thinking, or who knows, but you know, Ron Howard directed that movie, and he's like a diehard Obama supporter. He's a diehard, like, he's like not just happens to be a Democrat, he's like a diehard Democrat, like into the party politics. And that came out on Netflix, and the Obama is hugely invested in Netflix. Like, they have a special deal with Netflix, like a whole production company that has influence on Netflix and that puts out all the Obama movies that he's made.
Yeah, but I think, Joaquin, we should really stick to the topic of the campaign, the presidential campaign 2024, and we should talk about Vance in regards to this campaign. Let's narrow a little bit. Yeah.
Okay, then narrow your question.
Yeah. Okay. So, you said that well, you just said that J.D. Vance could have easily become a Democrat, but he is a Republican and he is running with Trump. So, what exactly? Why didn't he become a Democrat?
Yeah, I mean, it's there's different paths to these positions, and sometimes people even at the level of university are deeply involved in the Republican and Democrat, and what they want to do is to become an assistant. They want to have an internship with a senator or something like that, or a congressman. Either while they're in school or they're first after they graduate. They want to work if they want to get in politics, you must work as a staffer, you know, for a politician or a staffer for the political party. And then that puts you into a kind of orbit of potential people to be picked up as a staffer in a given campaign, either for the campaign or in the cabinet of that, or in the, you know, board of advisors or board of lackeys or whatever, or the employees, staffers for that politician. So that's one way. And that is more readily going to track you early on, like Democrat or Republican.
Yeah, Joaquin.
In J.D. Vance's case, it works a little differently, but he was recruited. You know, he was recruited to do it this way. It's a plan.